What if those cold feet you notice at night are not simply because of age? What if the tight feeling in your calves halfway through a walk, the heaviness in your legs by evening, or that strange tingling in your feet is your body trying to tell you something before the problem becomes serious? Poor circulation does not always arrive with a dramatic warning. In many cases, it begins quietly. Your feet feel colder, walking becomes a little harder, your legs tire faster than they used to. Maybe you notice mild swelling or occasional numbness. Because these changes happen slowly, many people ignore them for months or even years. After 60, that can be a costly mistake. Older adults are often told that slower walking, tired legs, numbness, tingling, swelling, and cold feet are just normal signs of getting older. Sometimes they are, but sometimes the real issue is happening inside the blood vessels. Arteries can become stiffer with age. The thin lining inside blood vessels, known as the endothelium, may not relax as well as it once did. Inflammation may rise, and blood may not move through the body as efficiently. That means the choices you make every day, especially the fats and oils you use in your meals, can matter more than most people realize. There is also an important warning here. Not every case of leg pain, cold feet, or numbness should be blamed on circulation alone. The American Heart Association notes that peripheral artery disease can cause cramping, aching, tiredness while walking, skin color changes, and even sores on the feet or legs. Cleveland Clinic also lists coldness, numbness, tingling, and pain among possible signs of circulation problems. So, if symptoms are becoming stronger, appearing more often, or affecting your ability to walk normally, changing what you eat should never replace proper medical care. With that clear, let us begin with number 7. Virgin coconut oil, probably the most misunderstood oil on this entire list. Coconut oil tends to be treated in two completely different ways. Some people speak about it as though it can fix almost everything. Others treat it as something that should never enter the kitchen. The truth is more balanced. Virgin coconut oil is very stable when exposed to heat. It does not break down as quickly as some delicate oils, which gives it one practical advantage in cooking. Oils that become heavily oxidized through repeated heating can produce compounds you probably do not want to make a regular part of your diet. So in situations where someone is choosing between repeatedly heated frying fat, shortening, large amounts of butter, or a small amount of virgin coconut oil can sometimes be the more practical choice. But this is where the marketing usually runs ahead of the science. Research comparing coconut oil with other plant oils has shown that coconut oil may raise HDL cholesterol, often called the good cholesterol, but it can also raise LDL cholesterol. That matters because higher LDL is not something we want when talking about long-term artery health. Mayo Clinic also points out that coconut oil remains high in saturated fat and is best used carefully rather than in large amounts. So coconut oil is not the circulation hero some online claims make it sound like. It belongs here because it can have a limited place in the kitchen, not because it should become your main daily oil. Think of it as an occasional tool. Small quantity, specific purpose, no miracle claims. And once we move to number 6, the picture becomes much more interesting, because this next oil gives people who still cook regularly with heat a far more practical, everyday option. Number 6 is avocado oil. And for many older adults, this may be one of the easiest changes to make without changing the meals they already enjoy. One reason healthier eating plans fail is surprisingly simple. They are inconvenient. Someone hears that a certain oil is good for them, buys an expensive bottle, uses it twice, then goes straight back to whatever they were using before. Avocado oil avoids much of that problem because it works well with normal home cooking. It contains a high amount of monounsaturated fat, including oleic acid, the same general type of fat that helps give olive oil its strong reputation in heart-focused diets. Research around unsaturated plant fats suggests that replacing harder animal fats and heavily processed fat sources with these oils can support healthier cholesterol patterns and overall cardiovascular health. Avocado oil may not have the same depth of long-term human research behind it as extra virgin olive oil, but it still makes sense as a practical swap in many kitchens. It has a mild taste, handles cooking heat well, and works easily with eggs, vegetables, fish, chicken, roasting, and simple pan-cooked meals. That matters more than it sounds. Your blood vessels do not respond to one perfect meal every few weeks. What matters is the pattern you repeat. If changing one bottle in your kitchen means you stop using a heavily processed cooking fat every day, that small decision can become far more meaningful over months and years. Now we move to number 5, walnut oil. Walnuts are already well known as a heart-friendly food, but the oil made from them receives much less attention. That is interesting, because walnuts contain unsaturated fats and plant compounds that researchers have studied for their possible effects on cardiovascular health. Studies involving walnut-rich diets have reported benefits related to endothelial function. The endothelium is the thin inner layer of your blood vessels. It helps control whether your vessels relax properly, tighten when needed, become irritated, or encourage unwanted clotting. When that lining works well, blood has an easier time moving where it needs to go. When endothelial function begins to decline, circulation can become less efficient. Walnut oil, however, needs to be kept in perspective. The strongest evidence is generally connected to whole walnuts and dietary patterns containing walnuts, not large amounts of walnut oil taken like some kind of treatment. Its real value is much simpler. Walnut oil works well as a finishing oil. You can use a small amount over vegetables, mix it into a bean salad, or add a little to a cold meal when you want a mild nutty flavor. It is not an oil meant for heavy frying. That brings us to number 4, which is slightly different because it is not really about one special bottle. It is about combining oil with one of the most studied ingredients in cardiovascular nutrition, garlic. Garlic has been studied for blood pressure, blood vessel function, platelet activity, and other areas connected to cardiovascular health. Research involving aged garlic extract has reported reductions in blood pressure in some people with uncontrolled hypertension. Research on black garlic has also shown some favorable changes in markers related to endothelial function, although the findings are not strong enough to justify miracle claims. The practical lesson is far less complicated than swallowing another supplement. Combine garlic with a good oil base. A simple dressing made from garlic, olive oil, herbs, and lemon can make vegetables, beans, fish, or salads much easier to eat regularly. And that may be more useful than buying a so-called health oil and leaving it untouched in the cupboard. Garlic provides flavor. Flavor makes healthier meals easier to repeat. Repetition is where dietary habits begin to matter. There is one caution. Garlic, particularly in concentrated supplement or extract form, may interact with certain medicines and blood-thinning treatments. Anyone taking several medications should discuss concentrated garlic products with a qualified clinician. Now we reach the top 3, and this is where correct use becomes just as important as choosing the right oil. Number 3 is flaxseed oil, one of the most interesting plant-based options on this list, but also one of the easiest to misuse. Flaxseed oil contains alpha-linolenic acid, usually shortened to ALA. ALA is a plant-based omega-3 fatty acid. Research has connected diets rich in ALA with several possible cardiovascular benefits, including support for normal inflammatory balance and blood vessel function. Some review data suggests flax-derived ALA may help support the ability of blood vessels to relax under stress. That is important because circulation depends on much more than whether an artery is completely open or completely blocked. Healthy vessels need to respond and relax properly, so oxygen and nutrients can reach tissues throughout the body. But flaxseed oil comes with an important limitation. The National Institutes of Health Office of Dietary Supplements explains that the human body converts only a small amount of ALA into EPA and DHA, the omega-3 fats commonly associated with fish. So, flaxseed oil should not be treated as though it is identical to fish-based omega-3 sources. It has value on its own, but the two are not interchangeable. Then comes the mistake that can ruin the reason you bought flaxseed oil in the first place: heating it. Flaxseed oil is delicate. It should not be treated like a normal frying oil. High heat works against the qualities that make this oil interesting. A better approach is to use it cold. Add a small amount to yogurt, a smoothie, cottage cheese, a cold dressing, cooked beans after they have cooled slightly, or vegetables after they come off the heat. Storage matters too. Heat, light, and air can all affect delicate oils. Leaving a bottle sitting beside a hot stove or in direct sunlight for months is hardly the careful use people imagine when buying it. Used fresh, stored properly, and kept away from high heat, flaxseed oil can be a useful plant-based addition to an older adult's diet. Used incorrectly, much of the point disappears. Now we move to number 2, sesame oil. Sesame oil has been part of traditional cooking for generations, but what makes it worth discussing here is not tradition alone. Researchers have also looked at how it may affect vascular function. In one clinical study involving men with hypertension, about 35 grams of sesame oil was linked with improvements in flow-mediated dilation, both after short-term use and over a longer period. Researchers also reported favorable changes in several markers connected to inflammation and endothelial health. Compounds naturally found in sesame are thought to play a role in pathways connected to nitric oxide and blood vessel function. Why is that important? Because circulation is not simply a question of having blocked arteries or clear arteries. Blood vessels constantly respond to what is happening inside the body. They widen, they tighten, they respond to pressure, hormones, inflammation, and chemical signals. As people get older, those responses can become weaker. Blood vessels may become stiffer, and the endothelium may not react as efficiently. Long before someone experiences a major cardiovascular event, those smaller changes may already be affecting walking stamina, blood pressure, or how efficiently blood reaches distant areas like the feet. Sesame oil also has a practical advantage. Its flavor is strong enough that you usually do not need very much. A small amount can add plenty of flavor to vegetables, grain dishes, bean bowls, or dressings. That allows you to use it as part of a varied diet without pouring large quantities of oil over every meal. It does not need to become the only oil in your kitchen. In fact, it probably should not. It works better as a supporting option, especially for people who like the taste and want some variety. And now we reach number 1, the oil with the strongest overall combination of practical use, cardiovascular research, and everyday usefulness. Extra virgin olive oil. %. If only one oil could stay in an older adult's kitchen, extra virgin olive oil would be the strongest overall choice from this list. Not because it has the flashiest label, and certainly not because someone on the internet called it a miracle food. It earns the number 1 position because research, practicality, and long-term dietary patterns all point in the same general direction. Systematic reviews of randomized trials have reported favorable effects from olive oil on markers related to inflammation and endothelial function, including improvements in flow-mediated dilation. The American Heart Association has also highlighted population research connecting regular olive oil intake with lower cardiovascular risk, particularly when olive oil replaces less healthy sources of fat. That last part is crucial. Extra virgin olive oil matters not only because of what it contains, but because of what it can replace. It provides monounsaturated fats, along with plant compounds known as polyphenols, when the oil is genuinely extra virgin and minimally refined. Those compounds are one reason the extra virgin form continues to receive attention in research involving inflammation and blood vessel health. And for older adults, this matters because vascular decline usually does not happen overnight. Blood vessels can gradually lose flexibility. Oxidative stress can build. Inflammation can remain slightly elevated. The endothelium can become less responsive. None of that feels as dramatic as a medical emergency, but these quiet changes can accumulate for years. Extra virgin olive oil has another advantage that may be even more important in daily life. It is easy to use. You do not have to build some strange new diet around it. It works with vegetables, lentils, beans, soups, fish, salads, whole grains, and basic home-cooked food. You can use it as a dressing, drizzle it over finished meals, or cook with it at sensible temperatures. That makes it more likely to become a habit instead of another bottle that gets forgotten at the back of the cupboard. But there is one detail that changes everything. Adding olive oil to an already poor diet is not the same as replacing a worse fat with olive oil. If you continue eating the same large amounts of butter, processed spreads, fried restaurant food, and repeatedly heated fats, then simply pouring olive oil over a salad does not cancel those choices. The stronger strategy is substitution. Use extra virgin olive oil where you might normally use butter. Replace heavily processed dressings with a simple olive oil-based dressing. Build meals around vegetables, beans, fish, or whole foods where olive oil fits naturally. That repeated replacement is where the real value lies. And this brings us to the part many people ignore, using these oils properly. Even a good oil can become a poor choice when storage, temperature, and quantity are handled badly. Flaxseed oil is a clear example. It should not be sitting in a hot frying pan. Walnut oil works better as a finishing oil than a high-heat cooking fat. Sesame oil is usually more useful in smaller amounts. Avocado oil makes sense when you need something practical for cooking with heat. Extra virgin olive oil can work both raw and during moderate cooking, but repeatedly overheating any oil until it smokes is hardly a smart strategy. Storage matters too. Leaving oil beside a hot stove, exposed to light every day, or keeping a delicate bottle open for long periods works against freshness, and quantity cannot be ignored. The phrase healthy oil sometimes makes people imagine that pouring more must be better. It is not. Oil is still calorie dense. Older adults do not need to drown otherwise healthy meals in fat simply because the bottle carries a heart-friendly reputation. Small, regular amounts usually make far more sense than occasional excess. One meal, one swap, and one repeated habit at a time. But choosing better oils is only half of the conversation, because there are also fats and cooking habits that may be pushing your circulation in the opposite direction without looking dangerous on the label. Words like light, vegetable, or cholesterol-free can make a product sound harmless, but the front of a package tells you very little about how that fat was processed or how it is being used. The bigger concern is not always one specific bottle of oil. It is repeated exposure to heavily refined fats that are cooked aggressively, reheated again and again, and used throughout restaurant food, packaged snacks, fast food fryers, and convenience meals. When oil is exposed to high temperatures repeatedly, it begins to break down. That means you are not just eating the original fat anymore. You may also be consuming compounds created during oxidation and heating. For an older cardiovascular system, reducing that repeated exposure is a sensible step. Age changes the equation. At 35, someone may eat poorly for years and feel almost nothing. Later in life, blood pressure may already be harder to manage. Blood vessel flexibility may already be reduced. Recovery can become slower. Blood sugar may be more difficult to control. That is when habits that once seemed invisible begin showing up in everyday life. Maybe the legs tire sooner. Maybe walking up a hill suddenly feels harder. Maybe the feet stay cold more often. Maybe there is numbness, tingling, or a noticeable drop in walking stamina. The dangerous assumption is believing that the absence of strong pain means everything must be fine. Peripheral artery disease does not always announce itself clearly. The American Heart Association notes that many people with peripheral artery disease may have few obvious symptoms, while others mistake the warning signs for arthritis, muscle weakness, or normal aging. That is why noticing patterns matters. If your legs regularly become tired or painful while walking, your feet are unusually cold, the skin changes color, or sores take a long time to heal, dietary changes should be treated as support, not as a reason to delay medical evaluation. That distinction may be one of the most important ideas in this entire discussion. A better oil can support a healthier dietary pattern. It cannot diagnose blocked arteries. It cannot replace treatment. And it cannot cancel smoking, inactivity, poorly controlled blood pressure, blood sugar problems, or a diet built mostly around highly processed food. No single ingredient can carry the weight of an entire lifestyle. So what does a sensible oil strategy actually look like? Start with extra virgin olive oil as the main everyday option when it fits the meal. When you need an oil that works comfortably with higher cooking temperatures, avocado oil can be a practical second choice. For cold meals, flaxseed oil can provide plant-based ALA, but it needs to stay away from high heat and should be stored carefully. Sesame oil can be added in small amounts for variety and flavor. Walnut oil works well as a cold finishing oil when you enjoy its taste. Garlic can be paired with olive oil, herbs, vegetables, beans, or fish to make simple meals easier to eat regularly. And coconut oil? Keep it in perspective. A small amount used occasionally may have a place, especially when it replaces a worse cooking fat, but it should not become the center of a circulation-focused diet. That is the pattern, not 20 supplements, not 7 bottles lined up beside the stove as though your kitchen has become a laboratory, not expensive products promising to clean your arteries in a week, just better choices repeated often enough to matter. And there is a simple way to put that idea into practice without changing everything at once. For the next 7 days, change one thing, only one. That single choice will tell you far more about whether you can build a lasting habit than buying every oil on this list at the same time. Your 7-day change could be as basic as replacing butter at lunch with extra virgin olive oil over vegetables. Maybe you normally cook everything in a heavily refined fat, so you switch those meals to avocado oil. Maybe you already eat yogurt, cottage cheese, beans, or cold salads, so adding a small amount of flaxseed oil becomes the easiest change. Or perhaps the issue is not the oil itself. Maybe most of your vegetables taste boring, which means you rarely eat them. In that case, a simple mixture of olive oil, garlic, lemon, and herbs could make those meals something you actually want to repeat. The point is not to make your diet perfect in 7 days. The point is to notice how one practical change fits into your real life. You can also pay attention to your body without convincing yourself that every small change came from one ingredient. Notice your walking. Notice whether your legs feel unusually heavy. Notice how your feet feel at night. Notice your energy after meals. Notice whether you are moving more comfortably or whether nothing seems different. A week is not enough time to make dramatic claims about circulation, and these oils are not medicine in a bottle. But the meals you repeat do matter, and better food choices become meaningful when they turn into long-term patterns. The deeper lesson here is not really about 7 oils. It is about stopping the habit of ignoring small warning signs while waiting for a bigger one. Cold feet may seem minor. Occasional tingling may seem easy to dismiss. A little leg fatigue during a walk may feel like something you can blame on age. Sometimes that explanation will be correct, sometimes it will not. The smarter response is to take those signals seriously while improving the parts of your lifestyle you can control. Your blood vessels are working every second of every day. They carry oxygen toward your brain, your muscles, your feet, your heart, and every other tissue that depends on a steady blood supply. Supporting that system does not require chasing every new health trend. It usually comes back to simpler habits. Move regularly when you are able. Pay attention to blood pressure and blood sugar. Limit heavily processed meals. Avoid relying on repeatedly heated fats. Choose unsaturated plant oils more often when they replace harder or heavily processed fats. Store delicate oils correctly. Use the correct oil for the correct type of cooking. And remember that quantity still matters. If you take only one practical idea from this entire list, make it this. Extra virgin olive oil is the strongest all-around daily option for most people in this ranking. Avocado oil is useful when cooking practicality matters. Flaxseed oil belongs in cold foods. Sesame and walnut oils can provide variety. Garlic works best as part of a better overall meal pattern, and coconut oil should remain an occasional choice rather than a daily circulation strategy. None of these choices has to feel dramatic. In fact, the changes most likely to last usually feel almost boring. One bottle changes, one meal changes, then another meal. A few months later, your kitchen looks different because your routine is different. That is how better habits usually work, quietly. And that is also why waiting for a health scare before changing anything makes so little sense. Small signals deserve attention before they become large problems. Use food as one part of that response, not the whole response. If pain, numbness, skin changes, coldness, sores, or walking problems are becoming more noticeable, get them properly evaluated instead of assuming a healthier oil will fix the cause. But when it comes to the meals you control every day, better choices are still worth making. You do not need a cabinet full of expensive oils. You need a few reliable options, the right cooking method, sensible portions, and enough consistency for the habit to become normal. And that may be the most useful idea here. Healthy aging is rarely built through one giant decision. It is built through hundreds of ordinary decisions that stop feeling like decisions after you repeat them long enough. So, choose one oil change from this video and use it consistently for the next 7 days. Then comment below with the oil you are starting with. Share this video with someone over 60 who needs to hear this. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more simple, research-based ways to protect your circulation, mobility, clarity, and independence as you age.